This is the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. And boom, here we go. Another episode of the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. Michael Dean, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. It's interesting to have a guest who's actually sitting with a podcasting microphone and headphones.
Right.
I haven't had that happen yet. But of course, that is how you're set up because you also are a podcaster.
Yes, sir. Yes, man. Yeah.
You know, I want to start out by giving a shout out to my friend Aaron Turner. He's the one that got me turned on to you. He told me about your Prince podcast. And of course, being a lifetime listener of Prince, not a lifetime, I was maybe 8 years old when I first started listening to him. But being a longtime listener of Prince's, of course, I got interested in your Prince podcast. And then through watching that on YouTube, I found out that you have other elements to your podcast. It's not just a Prince podcast. Right. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Can you start off by just telling me how long have you been podcasting? What got you into it? And what exactly are you doing? Because like I said, you have several elements to your podcast.
Yeah, well, I always give it up to this gentleman named Scott Sigler. He is a podcaster. He's an author. A long time ago, I still am, but I used to listen to, some of the first podcasters I found, let me say, were authors who would read their books.
Okay.
You know, this is like before audiobooks became like big as they are today.
Right.
And, you know, there wasn't necessarily a platform for authors to put their books out. So they were doing them through reading them online. It was actually a little bit before the Kindle self-publishing boom kind of happened. So I got into that, being that I love books and I dabble in being a writer as well. I just took to that and I was like, wow, okay, this is how Cats is doing it. And this, for me, you know, I had a background of being like a recording artist, kind of doing music and stuff. So I'm always like, what's the next thing I can get to do that would let me put my art or what my thoughts out there. So like I said, Scott Sigler, I saw his podcast, was a fan of it. And I was like, oh, I think I want to try that, you know? And at the time I was doing a duplication business, CD duplication business. And I had some equipment just from doing music and stuff. And so I called a buddy of mine, which is kind of maybe similar to you, but my best friend from middle school, we're super Prince fans. And we would be on the phone all the time talking about whatever new Prince thing was happening at the time.
Same thing with me and Aaron.
See. And so I said, hey, man, come over to the office. Because I had like a little office space at the time. I said, come over, man. I want to record us talking about Prince.
Okay.
And he was like, what is that about? I said, let's just do it, you know? And so that's how the Prince podcast started. That's how I got into podcasting. He would come over and we would just sit down in the office and just start shooting the ish about Prince and, you know, doing our thing, and didn't think much about it. And I put it out there, and, you know, there wasn't really a big, you know, podcasting was not what it was back then. When I say back then, this is probably about 15 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of right around not exactly the birth of podcasting, but it certainly was not widely known. Most people didn't know what a podcast was.
Yeah, that was the early, like back then it was literally, you had to have an iPod. You know, that's where, you know, and I didn't have an iPod, but I was still listening to them. I would download them or whatever. But that's how it started, man. And it was infrequent. You know, we may have done like one a month or something like that. But
actually, a lot of podcasters do that one time a month thing. Actually, I know a guy who does a what's it called? History of World War II podcast, and he just does one episode, but it's heavily scripted. You know, he sits and he writes out a script and all that stuff. So once a month isn't that unusual. It's unusual for me, but once a month is.
Well, now you got guys doing them like 2 or 3 times a day. So it's like a whole.
Hello, Joe Rogan.
Yeah. But man, that's how we got into it. And I think, and his name is Tobias. Shout out to Tobias. He probably stayed and did it. We might have done like 4 or 5 together.
Okay.
And, you know, I wanted to keep doing them. And I was like, hard for us to connect because we're living lives. And so I ended up getting another co-host. Shout out to Monique. And then Monique came through and we started doing it and get a little bit more consistent with it. And this would for Prince fans, this would have been around the time that 3121, the club, well, when Prince went to Vegas, when he had his Vegas. Yeah. So that was around that time. And she came up with the idea. She said, we should go to the Vegas shows and do like something for the show or something. And I was like, okay, at this time, I didn't really know who was listening to the show. I just didn't have a way of gauging it at that point.
Yeah.
But we went, got the okay from my wife to go with this other woman to Vegas.
You're just as smart as I am. Checking in with the wife for those kind of things.
I wasn't crazy.
My wife is real good with a knife, so I have to ask her about those kind of things.
Exactly. Yeah, man. So we went, and at this point, one thing I had not met Prince at this point or anything like that nature, but.
Wait, hold on. Are you going to tell me in a few sentences that you've actually met Prince?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Actually,
I'm jumping the gun here.
Physically first met him, but I knew he was aware somewhat of what I was doing at this point. And I'll say because of that was when Prince before he had his first website, he had reached out to a couple of fans.
Okay.
Who had done a few things online at the time to see if they could help him, come up with something. So it was myself and a few other people, one of note, a gentleman by the name of Sam Jennings. And, and this is early days, I get this email and it's from Prince. I'm like, what? And, it's like, yeah, I'm going to have this online meeting. I would love you to attend, I'm like, cool. Okay. So when he get to this meeting thing, it was basically, he was kind of seeing, I see what you guys are doing with your websites. Thinking on doing something. Maybe you guys we can all come together and, get some feedback and things of that nature.
So the man himself reached out to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the things was though, he wanted you to kind of stop what you were doing and join his sort of thing. And for me, as much as I was like, I can't believe I'm being recognized and, this is Prince and I'm also from the school of, nah, man, I don't join nobody's thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I politely, I say, hey man, I appreciate this, but I'm cool. But,
wise decision. I'll just say it.
Yeah. Sometimes I look back, but then I know the kind of person I am. I probably wouldn't have,
exactly.
The thing. But one of the people who did stay was Sam, this guy that I'm mentioning now. And I say it now because he's a good friend. And he ends up becoming, I don't know, some Prince fans are going to know his name as I say it, but he goes on to work with Prince and they create the many things with Prince, all of the Prince websites and music club and all this stuff. Sam helped create all of this stuff. And like, take it back to that Vegas thing I brought.
Yeah.
So when I go to Vegas, we get into the 3121 club that Prince had at the Rio. And the first moment I walk through the door, I see Sam. We had never met in person, but we kind of knew each other's pictures. And I was like, Sam? He's like, Michael? And I was like, yeah, man. He was like, I was just like, great to meet you. And I'm like, oh, you here with, like, okay, you really took that opportunity. You here with him and y'all doing this together. And he was like, yeah, man. He's like, let me show you Vegas. And so that was probably around 10 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. I don't get back to my hotel probably about 10 o'clock in the morning the next day. Like, so he just took me, we had a ball.
You saw it all. Yeah.
Saw it all and stuff I probably shouldn't saw.
Hey, it's Vegas. It's Vegas.
What stays in Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Was this before your wife or were you married at the time?
Well, I didn't do anything. I wasn't, let me be clear. I wasn't doing nothing that I shouldn't have been doing.
I'm just messing. I'm just
Hence
messing.
All to say I'm not married anymore, but it had nothing to do with that.
I'm just messing around.
but so here's the funny thing. We had planned to do a meet and greet. Again, I had no idea if anybody was listening to the show like that, but we just decided to do one and it was going to be the next day. Well, because I didn't get back to my hotel until in the morning, The meet and greet was, I think, at noon or something. So I was out. I didn't think anybody was, had no idea anyway. And come to find out, when I got back home later, people was like, yo, man, we were all ready for you guys at this meet and greet thing. What happened? I just felt so bad. I was like, well, and at that point I said, I'll never like take this for granted. Like, I should take it more serious. So that's just something I always talk about. But yeah. So been doing the podcast for a minute.
Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. I only have one Prince story, which is kind of like having contact with Prince.
Okay.
But you actually communicated directly with him through through this email and whatnot. What did that do for you as a listener of his music, as someone who appreciated his talent? Because let's just face it, there's some people who aren't all that familiar. They might have heard a song or two from Purple Rain. They may have even seen the movie, but they're kind of locked in that phase of Prince's career, and they may not even like it. So they may not have an idea of who Prince is, but we know who he is and what he's done. What did that do? What did that tell you when you? Yeah. I mean, it must have been a special kind of feeling. Here you are, you're doing something, and you certainly weren't planning on having any contact with him, and then all of a sudden you do.
At the time, I took it serious, but I'm kind of also one of the kind of people that in the moment, I kind of play things off sometimes. So as much as important it was to me, I remember a buddy of mine at the time, I showed him that email. I was like, dude, this is from Prince. And it was a big deal, but I didn't keep the copy of that. It kind of show you how much of a big deal it was. But I felt like, okay, some of this matters a little bit.
I was just going to say, it probably reinforced your feelings about what you were doing. You're obviously doing something right if you got the attention of the man himself.
It's hard for me to remember, to be honest with you. I probably felt more of the importance of it, unfortunately, when he passed.
I see.
But at the time, the whole reason I was doing it anyway and still do it is because, I love Prince. And when I say I love Prince, I always take away his work ethic and just his determination to do whatever it is you're trying to do. And that was
his belief in himself. His belief in himself. Yeah.
So for me, I have already I'm in with that. Of course, the music and all that, but the thing about Prince that always really got me is when I watched Purple Rain and I just saw them rehearsing. I was just like, oh, they taking it serious. They're putting in work. That's why I always say work it like a job.
I like that phrase, by the way. Yeah.
I would read those stories about Prince and them always rehearsing, and sometimes they didn't even go on tour, but you had to show up every day,
staying sharp. It's like a job.
Exactly.
And, I'm into powerlifting, so I look at things like that, training. It's in a training atmosphere. You're trying to get better at your craft, and he took that seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what really spoke to me, and a lot of that too. I think when I look up at certain men, father type things, those kind of not drill sergeant style, but just in my family, my grandfather was always about handling your business.
Right.
And showing up and doing what you're supposed to do. And I felt that kind of presence from Prince. It's like, how could he have all of this if he wasn't the driving force and putting in work and going hard? So that was the thing I really took.
He always gave me the impression of being the type of person who, I don't think it's that he, I don't know, but it seemed like it's not like he didn't trust people, but he didn't trust people to do anything for him. He took responsibility. He wanted it done. He did it himself in just about all aspects of his music and business life. That seems to be, that's the impression I got from him, at least.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's
something to learn from.
Yeah, very much. Something that I think I try to hold up when whatever I'm doing is, I'm not going to wait. I'm a guy, I don't like to wait on nobody else. So I just don't want to make any excuses. So I'm going to do it. I'll do it then. Like, that's cool. And I don't have no malice about,
Yeah.
You couldn't do it. No problem.
Right.
We're
right.
going to get on these mics, or, we're going to do this show. I'll tell you this, the thing that probably took away the most, or that really impacted me about Prince, is when he came to town for his One Night Alone show. It was like the Rainbow Children time.
One of my favorite albums, by the way.
Yeah. And that was when they had the sound checks you could go to.
Yeah.
Before the show. Going to the sound check, that's when I was like, okay.
You saw the man at work. You saw the man at work.
Yeah. And just I got to sit there and just like see everything. And I remember when we were sitting at the very front of the stage. Tobias was with me, who I started the show with, and another good friend was there. And I just remember seeing Prince walk up in front of us and go up the little steps of the stage. And I just I was like, oh shit, that's him right there. And that's the first time seeing him up close in person.
Right.
And he didn't have all the makeup and all that. So the thing I remember, I looked at his eyes and they were like really baggy. And I was like, this brother is putting in work. He looked tired, but I was like, he's here doing this and he's allowing us to watch. And that was the thing that really like struck me. And I was like, wow, this is not just something I always watch on TV or these videos. Right. This is a real person.
Yeah.
and he's like, he's a master at what he does. You know what I mean? Like,
you summed it up well with that sentence there. He is a master at what he does. Mm-hmm. I saw him when he came to Norway in 2011. He did 2 shows, and my wife and I were there at the second show. We were on the floor, 2 feet from the stage. He sweated on us.
Wow. Okay.
That's how close. That's how close we were. And I can't remember how long he played. I want to say it was 2 hours plus.
Okay.
And I've seen countless videos. People bootleg film, and so I've seen him perform before. But again, it's different when you're there. It's different when you see it. It's different when you can almost feel the interaction he has with his band, that wordless communication. I'm a musician as well, and you have to work your instrument to impress me. I know what's good and I know what's bad, and I thought I knew what excellent was until I saw that concert. Just the stuff he was doing. Playing his guitar one-handed on a solo and soloing with it on the keyboard at the same time. And people talk about, Geddy Lee from Rush can do that. I like Rush, I like Geddy Lee, but Geddy Lee cannot do what Prince did.
Not like he did, yeah.
And you don't understand it if you have to get beyond which and don't get me wrong, I'm very impressed with everything he did. Purple Rain and pre-Purple Rain, but you've got to get beyond that to truly, get beyond that in years. I'm talking to truly understand and appreciate what that man could do as a musician, as an entertainer, and as an artist. It's just incredible the stuff he did. And again, it's not just the music, it's not just the entertainment, but it's the business side. It's the humanitarian side, which I think is a beautiful thing to see. Since he's passed, more and more information is coming out about his humanitarian work, things that he did for people who were less advantaged.
Right. Yeah.
So I understand why you're motivated to have a podcast that focuses on him and his work.
Yeah, there are a few things that I'm into. I am a child of, I guess, the 70s, born in 69, and one of the there are like moments in your life that just kind of like click things on in your head, or that just change the needle. One of those for me was seeing Purple Rain when it came out. I had been exposed to Prince before that, but didn't really know who he was. I had a cousin. She moved to Houston, Texas, and I remember going to visit her for the summer would, visit family, and Prince was the king.
Yeah.
This was like
Yeah.
81, maybe. So I guess he was on Controversy or something.
Yeah.
And I had no idea who the hell Prince was. I didn't hear the music.
Okay.
But that's all she talked about. Like, she would take me over her friend's house, and that was all they were playing. And she had the Controversy poster on the wall.
Yeah.
And I looked at that. I'm like, who in the heck? This was, for me, hip hop was just sort of coming in. So I was like heavy.
Right.
Like Run DMC and things of that nature. So I'm like, who is this half man? I was
all of that. Yeah.
And I'm like, nah. And I just remember my grandmother, me and her came together, and she saw that poster on the wall. Just shredded. My cousin was heartbroken. I laughed because I just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And then I didn't think nothing about it. I went back to Seattle. They weren't playing Prince on the radio, and MTV hadn't really clicked at that point.
No.
I had no idea who the hell he was. A few years later, say it again?
No, I was going to say, so there was really no connection with him or his music until Purple Rain. That's what did it for you.
Purple Rain, when Doves Cry sort of became a pop number one across the board. It was all on the radio. So then, okay. And MTV was kicking. And at this point, my cousin moved back to Seattle. And one of the first things, she was like, we got to go to the record store. The new Prince album's coming out. And I was like, oh, so? Like, why do you want to buy that? And she's like, no, we're going to get it. So we went and got Purple Rain, and she bought the Times album.
Yes.
And I went and got King of Rock, I think, at the time. And I just remember sitting in the park, and we had a little boombox, and we had to take turns playing the cassette tapes. And so she put on Purple Rain, and all this comes out. And I was kind of like, it was like I wanted to hate, but then as I was listening, I was like,
you can't.
God, this is actually kind of good. Like, what is this?
See, I had talking about wanting to hate. That reminds me. See, I was in the. I'll tell you this: when Purple Rain came out, I got the movie on VHS for Christmas. And I think I watched it, man, at least 4 times on Christmas Day, over and over. But now I was already familiar with Prince. I was familiar with Prince from the get-go. His first album. I remember hearing it on the radio, and then this is back when.
Where were you at? Where'd you live at?
Ohio.
Okay.
Small town Ohio.
Okay.
Out in the sticks. And I got to tell you, this kind of ties into what I'm going to say about people trying to hate on Prince. But I was into him from the get-go. I remember they played Soft and Wet on the R&B radio station, 93.1, coming out of Cleveland, Ohio. And then the DJ talked for like 10 minutes about how this was one person, barely an adult, playing all these instruments. And as an 8-year-old kid, that fascinated me. I'm like, what is this? And then from there, fast forward just a couple weeks after I heard that, this girl, Cindy Coe is her name. Shout out to Cindy. Lived down the road from me out there in the country. She came up with a tape, a bootleg tape that she had recorded for You, his first album, and said, here, listen to this. And then I listened to the whole thing, and I, as an 8-year-old kid, barely having a true appreciation for music, my jaw hit the floor from listening to that one album. I couldn't get my head around the concept of one person playing all instruments. I didn't know anything about overdubs and stuff like that. I couldn't figure out how that was true. So I became a Prince fan from the get-go. Now, like I said, I grew up out in the sticks. We were, before Aaron, my buddy Aaron, who talked with you and introduced us, before he came to our school, which was in maybe a couple years after that, right around 1980s when he came to our high school from the city. I was the only black kid in my class. Okay? So I grew up around country music, pop, rock, metal. And 1978, as you may know, is the first album that Van Halen also came with. So Van Halen was that's the band that counted in my class. And I would tell everybody, Eddie Van Halen, he can't play no guitar. It's Prince.
You were saying that back then.
I was saying that back then, Eddie. I mean, you know how kids are just going to mess with you. Of course, Eddie Van Halen was good. Of course, I liked that album, but I had to support Prince.
I got
so
you.
I tell people, no, you need to listen to this album and listen to this man playing. And by the way, he's playing everything. And everybody that I told that to, when they ended up listening, of course they were hating on him. They would see his picture and, oh, who's this little girly man and all this stuff. But when they heard his music, they couldn't help but appreciate it. It was impossible to hate on it. You have to, if you understand music and you listen to what he's doing, you have to appreciate it. You can't hate it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I can dig that.
Yeah, going back to,
when I saw that movie.
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
I was blown away. I was like, I mean, just to see it on the big screen, I'd never seen it was like introducing a whole scene to us, you know, just, you know, that environment and Morris and all of that. I was like,
wasn't it exciting the way it brought out that sense of competition between the bands at First Avenue there?
Yeah.
And I never thought of music in that way before. You know, that you had to outperform somebody in order to make it. I didn't grasp that concept until I saw that in the movie.
You know, that you say that, it's interesting, is that actually to me plays into the same, in my mind, the same sort of mentality of hip hop in the terms of the boastfulness and the battle, rap battling, who could rap the best or who could dress the best. I think that may be, that's for better or worse. That's sort of a thing with Black people in America where we're sort of competing against each other in some capacity. And even if it's sort of done in those realms, it's not necessarily a negative thing, but you don't normally see that in other genres of music that do not involve us that I can think of. Like, I don't know, maybe of rock, do they have this sort of competitive nature?
Not really.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Not really. Not that I've ever seen anyway.
Yeah.
But thinking about Black people and competing with each other, it's not a negative thing. Competition is a good thing. But can we as a people, can Black Americans afford to compete with each other? Aren't we competing against a system that's set up to keep us down? And then here we are competing about, pulling the crabs down into the bucket, that whole analogy there.
And I wonder if that's sort of the, where that comes from a little bit. Why are we competing? Whose attention are we competing for?
Right.
But like I said, I understand it.
I do.
I think there can be good of healthy competition. And I think with a lot of things that we do, it may have started in the wrong place, but we sort of sometimes flip things on their head and we can make something good out of this.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of where some of that comes from. And so when you say that about the movie, I think that did speak to a lot of people. Yeah. It spoke to me for sure, just as much as it spoke to me when I saw, maybe another year later, Crush Groove sort of plays the same sort of story, and it's a competitiveness between certain people in that.
I did see Crush Groove, but I need to watch it again because I cannot remember details about it. I just know that I watched it. I need to get back and check that one out again. Yeah.
So Purple Rain, I want to just do real quick. So Purple Rain, that comes out. That comes out, and it's like a Marvel movie. That's how we looked at it. Like,
absolutely.
The whole school went to go see that movie, right? Yeah. Blew me away. I became a hardcore fan at that point. Just to go to Crush Groove real quick, I remember the day Crush Groove came out. It was the same type of rush. I remember the day it came out.
Wow.
Me and my buddies, we had to go see it. We went to this theater downtown. And at this point, I'm fully immersed into like hip hop and stuff, though everyone knows me as, oh, he's the cat that like Prince. And I was also a huge Michael Jackson fan.
Okay, so Michael too. Yeah.
That was my thing. So I had the juice, I had the Jerry curl, but I had, the jean jackets, the shell toe Adidas, all that, right? And I knew Sheila was in it. Yeah. So there was a Prince connection.
Yeah.
But I say that with the day it came out, we bum rushed to that theater. We went to the very first showing, and then we sat in those seats for the next 3. and did not
Oh,
get up and
oh.
watched it 4 times in one night.
See, now that's probably what I would have done if I could have got away with it. If I'd have been at a theater for Purple Rain, I probably would have done that.
Right.
As it is,
Yeah.
like I said, I watched it like 4 times at home. So
Yeah, man, that was, and you know, those are those types of moments. You know, the other moment for me, and I would do a podcast about it if I felt I was knowledgeable enough, and I probably am, is Star Wars. Like,
oh, that's the first movie I saw in the theater. Was the first Star Wars.
okay,
First
wow.
movie I ever saw in the theater was that.
Really?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I remember seeing that the first time I saw it. I couldn't understand the movie when I first saw it, but I remember going to see it, and then it was just a thing. Like every time you went over your friend's house or there was a get together with the kids, the parents would take us to Star Wars.
Yeah.
That was the thing. You would go see Star Wars.
Film. It was a groundbreaking film for the story, for the cinematography. It was
that was a light bulb switch in my mind when I saw that, and I was like, okay, right. This is for life for me. Science fiction. To me, Prince, science fiction, all of that in the same sort of.
See, and this matches up with what I said at the beginning, is that we have a lot of things in common. Okay, you follow Prince and his music, so do I. Now I know you're a Star Wars fan, so am I.
Yes.
You're a musician, so am I.
Okay.
You're a doer for self, so am I.
Awesome.
Now, let me ask you this about music. Was it Prince who inspired you to get into music, or did you have that in you already?
Looking back, I had it in me, and it probably came more so from my parents and listening to music, and probably like what it made me feel like when I heard certain songs.
Yeah.
Again, I said I still am a big Michael Jackson fan. So growing up, Michael Jackson, the Jacksons, sort of like in my DNA.
Okay. Michael never did
heavy.
anything for me.
Really?
I respect him. I see his talent, but he never really did anything for me.
Love. I was just watching. I could go on tangents, so you can pull me back when you want to.
My podcast is a tangent. Okay. There is no format here.
All right. I was just watching. I was actually watching somebody's reactions to Zack Snyder's Justice League, and they were getting to the parts where they were showing Superman and stuff. And I'm sorry, no, they were watching Batman v Superman, which is, I'll say, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. With that said, they were showing the stuff with Superman, and it was like, Superman just really wants to just prove to the world that he is a good guy and he's here to help people, but the world is going to be the world. And he was going through a lot of shit. And I was looking at that and I was like, you know what? That's Michael Jackson. I was like, Michael Jackson and Superman. Because in my mind, Michael Jackson is just purely the most innocent. His essence of a child still runs through him as an adult. And obviously he's had a life that none of us have probably ever will live, in terms of how he was raised and coming through that, the child star, prodigy, and all of that stuff, and not having the normal sort of school upbringing and different things. And he's, and so I was like, he's thrust into this, but he's super gifted and obviously just ridiculously talented. Yeah. And there's just something about him that just speaks to people.
I see
mainly
that. I see
kids
that.
can just identify with him. Like my daughter is 5. She doesn't know the history of Michael Jackson at all. But let me turn on one of his songs or videos. You'd think that she knew everything. She's locked in, right? And I was like, there's something there. Yeah. And I was like, the world is going to try and corrupt that. There's no way you're going to have somebody that is that much power, that much sort of love and innocence. The world does not.
There's a lot of jealousy in the world, and that jealousy will corrupt that type of talent, that level of talent.
Yeah, and I'm like, they tried to destroy him.
They see, they see his difference. They see his otherness, and they see his talent, and it pushes people to put it in a negative light immediately.
Yeah. And they're gonna love him.
Yeah,
initially, because they can't help but love him. Is just, especially he's a child, and it's like, oh, he just brings happiness, and he's gonna grow into a certain point, and he's gonna become very powerful. probably just based off of his gifts and what he's giving. There's going to be a certain time when they can't use him or he's beyond their control, and someone's going to try to turn that. And whether it's from, a father who's like, he's a money bag. If I tell my son to say this, we can extort this. And then there's this other people in play who, be like, he has to be evil. He must have been doing it. Let's turn and I was just like, he was Superman. Just the way in that movie, how Superman was just trying to be good, but Lex just could not accept that. And even people were scared of, they don't know what to make of this thing. It is so different. They loved him at first, but he still terrifies them because they don't really just like, I don't know.
Sad. It's kind of sad that towards the end of Michael Jackson's life, for quite some time, you could say maybe the last decade of his life, there is this build up of animosity towards him. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how do I say this? All these allegations of child molestation and whatnot. I also do stand-up comedy, and I joke about that, about Michael Jackson and what he went through. But it's not. I don't believe that Michael Jackson was a pedophile. I believe that Michael Jackson's lifestyle, because of his differentness, because of his exclusion from normal society, because of his talent, led him to relate to children in a way that others couldn't relate to. They didn't understand his relationship with children. That's what I think. I'm not.
You kind of assume. Well, then you have to assume he must have been doing something wrong because you couldn't see yourself.
See,
relating to kids on that level,
and I think
right?
that's that evil, that mean side of humanity that automatically jumps to that. Because I looked at those allegations and thought, leave the man alone. Is it weird? Yeah. Is it different? Yeah. Would I hang out with kids like that? No. But why jump to that? And then how many of these people are just trying to get some kind of financial settlement out of him? So you got to I took all of that with a grain of salt. And it just seemed like such a terrible run for the last 10 years of his life. Nothing but torment with lawsuits and things like that. But that's the price of being talented.
You started to see it wear on him and wear it down. So ultimately where he dies at an early death. Yeah. I think he will be he already is, but I think even like 20 and 30 years from now, he is going to be seen even more fascinating than we.
Do you think so?
Remember. I think so. Yeah.
I don't think so. I think that, Mike, and I'm not trying to say anything negative about the man, but I think that Michael Jackson is already so loved and his life is already so well known and well documented. I can't see him getting more popular than what he is. But on the other hand, I think Prince will gain in popularity and notoriety. I think there's a lot of things about his life and his. Think about the rumored vault of music that he has. Look at this album coming out. When is they're releasing it in June on his birthday, I believe. Or I'm not sure when it's being released. But this new album that they're going to release of Prince's, and there's enough albums to get an album a year for the next 100 years at least.
No, I think Prince can only go up in terms of, learning more about it, because there's a lot we don't know about Prince.
Exactly. That's my point.
But I guess my point to say about Michael Jackson is I think that there'll be enough time where I still think a lot of this generation remembers the Wacko Jacko and all of that taint on him. And I think like my daughter's age, they don't know anything about that.
Okay, I understand.
You know what I'm saying? They just this is something that my parents sort of play sometimes, or that I sort of see in pop culture. It seems fascinating, but I don't really know the depths of how big he was.
Right.
And I think there'll be something later in the history where they'll be like, this guy was, you'll see that his touch is on everything. And I just think his music will still be just as, again, you can turn on for somebody who doesn't know it, and it's going to instantly like, wow, the sound of his voice, or there's just that something in it. I think it was, and then just look at how he looked when he was a kid versus how he looked when he died. There's nobody in popular culture who has transformed his visuals look like that. I just think it would be so fascinating later.
I don't know. Let's do another podcast in 50 years and see where Michael Jackson is then.
Possibly. I have this book I've been working on. It's a fiction book, science fiction, and the book starts. It's a huge concert, and it's a concert of AI, Michael Jackson, and Prince. Oh. And it is, it has been the estates for both of them have sold the rights to both of, not only the music, but who they are as
essence,
people.
Their very essence.
And these other companies have come through and created new music using the sound samples and all of this stuff of them, and created this dope ass duets album. And, it takes place a little bit in the future, and they are the biggest thing going now.
Now that is a book.
Yeah. And they're like, since it's, it's AI and it's sort of a CGI hologram thing, they're on tour around the world in multiple places at the same time because it's, AI. So in the concert at this one, there's a big open air concert, Michael Jackson and Prince doing their thing. Songs are, take the greatness of Prince, take the greatness of Michael, and you threw it in the computer and it made this dope ass album. But the kids and those people at that time are hard pressed to think that that's not really them because they don't know the history. I mean, so it's only the older people who are sort of like, that ain't the real, they ain't, and they just seem like haters because it's like, this is dope. They're, this is pretty, and so this, and it just kind of frames what kind of world that this story takes place.
I would probably be a hater.
Taken that.
I would probably be
a hater too. The biggest movie at the time, one of the other characters in the book, he ends up becoming he's a mech fighter pilot, but originally he is a action movie star, but he is in Fast and the Furious 30, but it stars him, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Bruce Lee. And they are obviously AI CGI versions of them in the movie. But again, to the culture of that time, you'd be hard pressed to tell them that's not, like, Bruce Lee is not a real person, and Schwarzenegger is not the real person at that time. And in Hollywood's thing is, why recreate and try to invest into new actors and hope that they become icons when we can take icons who know that work and put them in movies?
What a concept.
Maybe another person. So
how far along are you with this book?
It's actually a book I actually already had released, but then I took it back and I'm adding more of this stuff to it. So it's coming. Man,
you got to let me know.
I don't have any at the moment. I have like t-shirts and posters and stuff of this, but it's an interesting story.
You gotta let me know when that comes out. I'll get you back on. Man. We can talk about that on another episode.
Yes, sir. It's a book. Real quick, I would say one of the first things that happened I'll say the setup of it. The setup is that this concert thing goes on and a giant spaceship just comes out of the sky, crash lands into the city, smashing through buildings and smashes right into that concert thing. And so the presence of that obviously would change the world forever if that actually happened. I would describe this book as probably it is Robotech meets Minister Society, and is this epic sort of tale. I'll say that much. And one of the very first things that happens in the book, it's sort of a flashback to one of the moon landings. And there's the moon landing that we saw on TV, but there was a secret mission where a couple of the other astronauts who were actually CIA guys, they were going to investigate a signal that had been coming from the moon. So they go off into this thing on the moon, and it's like a cavern or something. They go down there, find the signal. But when they get to it, they find the body of a black woman in there. And they determined, they said, this body has been here for millions of years. And we can't let nobody know about this because that would change the world's dynamics overnight. If somebody said there was a black woman on the moon that kind of predates Earth, like that's.
I was just going to say, I don't think there's any racists listening to my podcast, but if they are, they're pissed off thinking about black people, not just originating from black people in Africa, but also on the moon.
Yeah, it would be quite the head buster, as I say.
Oh man.
But anyway, enough of that.
Let me ask you this one more Prince question before I ask you a few other things, or we dive into a couple other subjects. Do you think that his death was without any criminal element? I don't.
Well,
I don't. Let me tell you what I think. Let me tell you what I think, and then you. Let me just bounce this off for you. I don't know the inner workings of his finances, but I do know, like anyone who knew Prince's music, I do know that he was working to make some significant financial gains through his master recordings. I do know, and anyone who knows anything about Prince know that he was one who spoke clearly and loudly about the importance of owning your own work.
Absolutely.
We also know that he, there's a video clip out there. It's been going around on Facebook. I see it. It comes up on my timeline every year as those 1 year memories, and then I repost it. Prince is at the, was it some sort of NAACP award ceremony, or was it an Ebony Jet, some sort of ceremony? And he gets up on the podium, and it's full of black people. This is why I'm thinking it was NAACP or Ebony Jet, something like that. The whole audience was black.
There's a shot of Russell Simmons.
Yes,
looking like
yes.
You're saying too much.
And Prince, and Prince said something to the effect that they call you a minority. Speaking to the crowd, he says, "But stop and look at yourselves. You are the majority here. You are the talent. You are the money makers." I'm paraphrasing here. You are the money makers. Imagine what kind of a game it would be if we were the ones making the rules. And I always thought, when I saw that clip and I heard him saying that, and he said other things on the same subject, but when he said it in that way, I'm like, he's not just talking about his own work, which has a value of however many hundreds of millions. He's talking about the entire industry, which has a value of however many hundreds of billions, if not a few $1 trillion. And he's talking about shaking up that system and putting the money in the hands of all of those black artists who are the movers and shakers out there in the field doing the work. And I remember thinking, there's some dudes in some suits and ties and some lawyer types that don't like that. There's some suits and ties and lawyer types who not only don't like it, they are enraged by that. And they will do, people have been killed for less.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And I believe that I don't want to call this a conspiracy theory. This is just what I feel, and I don't think it's illogical what I'm saying here. I think that Prince not only talked so much about taking the power that his own recordings had, I believe he did things to take the power and the wealth of his recordings. And I believe he encouraged others to do it to the point that it pissed off enough people to where somebody, I think there was a dirty hand in his death. I don't think it was just an accidental overdose. I think it was accidental in the sense that he didn't mean to overdose. But there's too much funny business going on around his death for me to believe that there wasn't someone who had something to do with that. And then just listening to his words over the last 20 years and what he was doing, what he was trying to do and what he did do and what he was encouraging others to do. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that somebody played a hand in his death for financial reasons.
I can't. That's an interesting take. I can see the logic.
You can say it's crazy if you think it's crazy.
Well, I don't think it's crazy. I see the logic in what you're saying. I don't know. I've heard something, being that, sometimes you do these interviews and
people
there's
say
a lot
things.
of off the record type of stuff that I don't put out.
Sure.
So I've heard some things. I'll say this. My take on it is that could be true. There's obviously, I think, more to the drug thing I might, where it's still an answer to me. At least I missed it, where he got it from or what was going on with that, who was supplying it and things of that nature. But I don't personally think anybody forced it in his mouth.
No.
And so for the kind of person that I am, I say, well, as a man, we make a decision on what we're going to do. And Prince he seemed like one of those types of guys, and people who work with him told me, you don't tell Prince nothing. Right. He tells you what he's going to do.
I believe that, yeah.
So to me, I look at it in a sense, and, maybe like you, I'm a father. And so I sort of look at things sort of the realms of, I have children or people that I have to answer to and that I'm responsible for. So I'm going to make a decision on what I choose to do. And I'm going to have to deal with the consequences. And those consequences may affect somebody else down the line. So I always have to keep that in my head when I'm doing something.
Right.
And so when I look at Prince, I look at it and say, well, this is a guy he's incredibly talented. He knows he's incredibly talented. He's actually very intelligent. He started from the bottom and bootstrapped himself up into these, to what he is. He's self-made.
Amen.
Looking back at his childhood and sort of, his relationship with his dad and, his mom, and, sometimes that frames how we do things as an adult, where I'm never going to let myself be disappointed or let somebody have power over me because I don't want to ever feel that again as I felt before. I'm going to always be in charge and you can't tell me things. I feel like he might have been dealing with whatever it was, or he may have been like a lot of us, some men, we don't really take our health as serious as we talk it.
Yeah.
And there might be things going on where we know ain't right with us, but our pride and ego are not going to allow us to look weak out here. And when I look at Prince, he seems like a type of guy who his pride and ego are up here. Because again, this is a man, and I'm not saying this in disparaging to Prince. I love Prince, but
yeah, I understand.
He has makeup at all times. He has to always be seen in a position of power at all times. There's something behind that. Like, why would you always need to be in control?
Right.
So I feel like he might have been dealing with some stuff, but because he does not want to be seen as weak, he was not going to openly acknowledge these issues. And he always, his whole sort of adult life is always about being on performance time.
Yeah.
He's always Prince.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so even though he may be struggling with some issues where he is super in pain and has to take these problems, because he does not want to let you know that he's got to do everything to hide behind something. And so he's probably was going through a lot. I think when he kind of died on that plane,
yeah,
and they had to bring the plane down, to me, that was God saying, listen, man, you ain't going to listen to nobody else.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's only so many people that you're going to allow to speak into you that you're going to listen to. And let me show you the power of God. And hopefully I can wake you up.
Take your life for a few minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So it's nothing, because I can take your riches, whatever, but I'm going to actually literally take your life,
yeah,
and give it back to you.
For those who don't know, he was actually, he was coded out on a flight, on a plane. They thought he was gone. How long before he actually passed? Just a couple of weeks, maybe?
Yeah, I think a week or so, or something like that. So, and I think for normal people who have sort of had a traditional, life, that might have been enough to let me pump my brakes.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but sometimes, it all depends on if he was an addict at that point.
And again, all depends, he may have, because that I don't know, right?
Exactly. That's the thing that's kind of, nobody knows. Was he an addict at that point, or did this overdose just kind of happen then on the plane for the very first time?
Sure.
And that was the first signal at all of him having any kind of an issue with opiates. Nobody knows. Nobody knows the answer. Well, I'm sorry. People do know, but it hasn't come out. It hasn't come out yet.
Right.
I guess in my admiration for the man, I don't want him to have been an addict before that.
Right. And, the people have, I would imagine probably a lot of people who dibble and dabble and things or get on that level, they've probably had a few bumps in the road.
Sure.
It's just a logical thing without me saying too much. So there's probably been other situations that may have happened.
Probably.
And maybe this would have been but it never got to this point. Yeah. But again,
who knows?
You get to a point where it's like, okay, man, you actually kind of, like you said, code it out this time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to pump your brakes. But, I put Michael in the same boat. I put Whitney. Yeah. And there's been countless of these rock stars who've went out this way.
I put my son in that boat as well. My son passed away from a heroin overdose in 2019, November of 2019. And that at that point was his 7th or 8th overdose. So that right there is a testament to how when that stuff gets a hold of you, it's got a hold of you. And sometimes even countless overdoses will not wake a person up. It didn't wake my son up, and he's gone now.
Man, my heart goes out to you. I can't even imagine
he's
that happened to my kid.
His passing is actually the reason for me doing this podcast. I started this podcast in March of 2020, just a few months after he passed, because I got so upset, very depressed, and I didn't like feeling like that, but I didn't know how to not feel like that. So my wife told me, she said, you've been talking before about doing a podcast. Why don't you just start it and it'll give you something else to focus on? So I'm like, okay, that's great advice. That's why I married the woman. She's a lot smarter than me. So she put that idea out there, and I just took it a step further and said, okay, if I'm going to podcast, I'm going to bring in guests who inspire me, because I need to be inspired. I'm depressed. I need to turn my attention in a different direction. So I need to bring in people who I'm interested in, people who inspire me, people who I can learn something from. And it all started because of his passing. And when I think of Prince's passing, I can't help but think of my son's passing. Just wondering at what level, was there an addiction there? And if there was, what level and how long did he struggle with it? Because again, my son, he was 24 when he passed. I think he started with his heroin when he was 17 or 18. Okay, so that's 6, 7, maybe as many as 8 years with a heroin problem. How long was Prince going around with an opiate problem? I don't know. It's just for a while there, I was listening to podcasts and looking at different groups on Facebook who were very focused on trying to unravel the circumstances of Prince's death. And then, people drop a few ideas out there, and the idea of someone playing a dirty hand in his passing doesn't seem too far-fetched. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem too far-fetched.
It doesn't. I'm still throwing a bunch of song. I apologize. That's
okay. It's okay.
Yeah, in terms of Prince, so it's just as sad.
It's very sad.
Very sad
I
situation.
I thought that man would live forever. And like I said, I've been following his music since the first album. And I would talk about Prince at the drop of a hat and proclaim my admiration. But it wasn't until he passed, because it hurt me. And I've liked actors, actresses, other musicians who have passed. And it's just been like, oh, well, that's sad. But when he passed, it hurt. A part of my life was missing. Yeah. Because I got so much inspiration from the way he did things. I got so much inspiration from his music, his business sense. And then all of a sudden, it's gone.
Yeah, and it's.
I felt it. I felt a loss that I never felt from another celebrity passing. It's the first time I ever felt that way.
Yeah, I think because Prince was always there, man. Like it was always something. He always gave us something, and we're so used to waiting for that new album or whatever it was through our whole life. It was, I remember like every relationship I've ever been in, there's always been a Prince. He was always there. It was always something. He was, just
it was a
part
soundtrack.
of
It's a
your
soundtrack
life.
to life. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just a thing like, and now it's gone. And it's like, man, sometimes did I really appreciate it in the moments? Was there other things going on we just didn't recognize? And I think there'll be a point where, and it may be years from now, but I think the real story or more deeper look into Prince is going to happen. And I just pray when it does, we're able to not say accept it, but realize that he wasn't just here for our entertainment. Like he was a person, he was a man like a lot of us. And we built this image of what we think he was like in our minds off of stuff. But I think when we start to see, when people start to talk about stuff, it'd be like, I get why you want to protect him. I want to protect him. Yeah. But I also think it's even more important that other people down the line, the generations, can learn of his fullness. Because I look at Prince, as much as I love him, and he was so committed to his job and his work, I almost wish he had the same level of importance or commitment to his life, man, because he should still be here. You know what I mean? Like if he took his health and his life as important as he took getting in that studio and performing for us, I think he would be here. And I think that
very well
ultimately would be better for him, because I want him to be alive, whether more so than I would want him to get in front and dance for me. You know what I mean? Like, so
that's very well said. Very well said.
And just the last thing I'll just say, that's sort of as I look at Prince now, that's what I learned from Prince. Not only do I learn the music and all that, but I learned that you can commit your life to doing your job or going to your job every day. You commit our lives to going to these jobs for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
But that don't do nothing for my kids.
No.
You know what I mean? Like they would rather me probably not have all this money or whatever you think I may have, and be there for them when they become older, and here come pops, or I have my pops around or my mom around. Yeah. Those are the things. So when I look at Prince now, I realize the importance of, I can't get too caught up in doing my podcast and performing for everybody. My real job is the most important thing. And I got to do everything in my power to continue to be here as long as possible. So
hey, I talked about us coming back in 50 years and doing another podcast. Let's come back in 50 years and do another podcast episode. I want to still be alive and kicking. And absolutely. And I feel what you're saying. The well-being of my family, my wife and my kids. I have a daughter back in the States, 2 grandkids. That's who I'm here. Those are the people I'm here for. Doing this podcast is fun. Doing my music, writing, stand-up comedy, these things I do for myself, it's fun, but my family is the number one focus. And I have to say, I kind of felt that as well. I don't think I could have put it as eloquently as you did, but I also wish that Prince would have cared about his health, about himself, as much as he did for his art. Because, he would be here. He would still be here.
Man. He still has he had a lot to teach us.
Yeah.
Just imagine a Prince at 80 or something, man, and just
the older he got, and this is the way it's supposed to be, but it doesn't. It's very rare that we can actually witness it in real life. But the older Prince got, the wiser he got.
Yeah,
I love going on YouTube and finding clips of. There's not a lot of them because he didn't do a lot of interviews, but the clips are out there on YouTube, and I just like hearing the wisdom that he dropped. The dude was smart. The dude was smart, and I miss him.
Yeah.
But let me ask you something. You live in Seattle, right?
Yes, just outside of Seattle.
Okay. Over here in Norway, now, and I still have a lot of contact. In fact, most of my social media contact is with people back home in the States. So not just here in Norway, but also in the States, everybody wants to talk about how Seattle is the example of left-leaning politics gone wrong.
Oh, really?
Seattle, Portland.
Okay. Yeah.
You see something on the news, there's some kind of protest in the streets of Seattle, and the reality of it is it's only maybe one city block, but they act like the whole city is up in flames. Can you, as a Seattle resident, as a Northwest Coast resident, tell me the reality of the social political situation there? Now, this is a big right turn from talking about Prince and music and whatnot, but I do want to ask you about this.
Well, as a lifelong Seattle resident, born and raised here, the Seattle of today is nothing like the Seattle that I grew up and love.
Okay.
And I say that in a sad way.
Okay. Explain.
Seattle wasn't really a big city back then. I mean, we didn't experience a lot of the things that other parts of the country experienced. There wasn't that much crime. There's a very low Black population. It probably still is. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It just didn't have an influx of a lot of the things that you would see on the news.
You're talking about like crime statistics.
Just the crime, and you could go anywhere you wanted to. There wasn't a lot of division per se. Now, there might have been things I didn't see. Now, looking back at the history of Seattle now, it's always been on some racial type stuff. My parents and grandparents, they was battling. I come to find out my dad was in the Panthers, and he, there's a whole book of, the name escapes me. There's a book of the guy who led the Panthers here. That was my dad's best friend. And he speaks of my dad throughout that book a lot, and the stuff that they would be doing as kids, and it blew my mind. So there's always been a very racial sort of history here, but like you said, it's very much a liberal thing. So a lot of that was hidden, or you just never really got to see that. Right. I think Seattle now, it's a sad. I watch my words. Let me see. I'm going to take downtown Seattle, for instance. Beautiful. Seattle, this whole area is beyond beautiful. It doesn't really rain. It doesn't rain like you think it does, but absolutely beautiful. There's water, the forests, mountains, you name it, good food, all that good stuff. But I think what has happened is because people want to sort of feel like they're fair, and want to feel like there is none of these problems, they allow everything to go on. Okay. And so it has become a place where there is extreme homelessness.
Really?
It's not homelessness that's just hidden in the crevice. It's like if you go downtown Seattle, they're camping out on the streets, on the sidewalks, and there's some kind of law or rule that they cannot move those people. If you put your tent up, they can't move it. So you're literally going to have tents on the sidewalk of what used to just normally be the great, let's go to the market and
that's amazing.
Walk by there are tents and stuff.
That is amazing.
There are people doing hardcore drugs out there because, again, they felt like, hey, we don't want to persecute, we don't want to lock everybody up for that, or let's give them a safe place to shoot up at. But by doing that, when they shoot up and when they're not high anymore, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get high again. So you've got zombies literally running around the streets in a place that you would have a lot of tourism and you would bring your kids and stuff. You don't want to do that. You have these $1 million condos and all this, but at the bottom of it are tents and people blasted out of their minds.
Wow.
So that's a big problem. That's a big problem, and then of course, this is a land of opportunity here. Absolutely. A lot of jobs, a lot of money to be made here. You got some of the biggest companies in the world here, right?
That's right.
It's a lot of millionaires, just like normal cats that got millions of dollars, right?
Right.
But so what does that mean? So for all the people like myself who don't have all that, it's very expensive to live here. So for me, that's what I say. I don't live in Seattle anymore. I live outside of Seattle. Seattle is extremely expensive to live.
So it sounds like Seattle doesn't have much room for a middle class person. It sounds like it's the millionaires living up in the penthouses, and then down on the streets, it's the homeless drug addicts, and the middle class is kind of hitting the road for the suburbs. Does that sound right?
Way out in the suburbs, maybe, driving in or coming in. Those jobs, if you have a family, you're not living in Seattle. I think the median house price in Seattle may be $500,000 to $600,000.
Really?
For just a regular house. Wow. That's the low ball.
Right.
And so and then of course, with the explosion of Amazon, bringing a lot of very smart, intelligent people, and they pay those people a lot of good money. But what happens is they all come. And so the places where you could live in the city and stuff those rents have went, because they're like,
okay.
These people can pay $3,000 a month. That's chump change to them.
Let's
hike up to, no problem. So everybody else has to move way out.
There's just no room for the average middle class person. You got to be upper middle class or upper class. It sounds like.
And you got to live way out somewhere else. Yeah. So, and then when, the George Floyd protests and things, Seattle has always been a protest city.
Yes, it has.
That's
why I couldn't wait to ask you, because there's this image of a Seattle protest, and they make it sound like the entire city. Well, when I say they, I'm talking right-wing media will make it sound like the entire city is in flames.
No, it's not in flames, but it is. What's the? There was a very big protest that happened years ago. There was a movie that got made about it. Andre 3000 was in this movie. It was the W2O, or it was a big international conference thing.
Oh yes, I remember that movie.
The E3, not E3, but it was something.
I remember, something like that. Yeah.
I was living in downtown Seattle when that happened, and I remember seeing like these little tanks going on. I was like, "What is going on?" Cheering. So, but I say they've always had, every year they had May Day. Forget about it.
Oh yeah.
They're gonna act a fool. So when you put that, and then you put the George Floyd protests that are happening, they took that to the next level.
How bad did it get in Seattle?
It's still bad. It got as bad as you heard about that whole little zone they took over.
Yeah.
That was maybe
how big of an area was that?
I think it was maybe a couple of block round radius. It was in a very trendy area of Seattle. That shocked me that would allow that to happen.
But see, that's my point. It wasn't a widespread. It wasn't a big chunk of Seattle.
No, that
was isolated to just a couple of blocks.
It was isolated to a very expensive, trendy area. But Seattle was not that big either. So it's not have a huge effect on Seattle. But what happened is the downtown core of Seattle, where I actually worked there, it came there nightly. They would just leave. But what happened was everything had to board up. And that was the whole tourism area. That was the downtown business area. That was where everyone worked area and shopped. So that was destroyed.
I see.
And to this day, it is still somewhat boarded up. And so you had that, plus the homelessness ramped up. Tourism was over because of COVID.
Yeah.
People were already like, don't go downtown no more anyway before all this happened. So that even just pushed that even further. There was a couple of big shootings that happened downtown. One right in front of an Amazon building, big gun battle. People got killed, and it was broad daylight. So you had all of this stuff at the same time, to the point now it's a ghost town. Businesses have closed. Everyone works from home. And it seems as if there's still not an end in sight, because at the drop of a hat, there'll be another.
Something else will happen, and then they'll start marching again.
It's still been having people. The place where I work at, I work by the convention center, and there's a restaurant on the corner of where my shop is at, and they busted out his windows a couple of days ago just for no random reason.
Wow.
And these are reals. For this guy, it's $5,000 per window, and he's not.
Yeah,
that's a hit.
So
Well, just so to say, is it bad here? Unfortunately, absolutely, and it's sad because there's so much money here.
yeah.
They don't. It's still expensive. I don't think it has hurt like the housing market here at all. It's not going to hurt Amazon. It's not going to hurt Microsoft. They're making more money than they ever had.
I was just going to say it fascinates me that the average person is doing worse than ever. I can sit and crunch the numbers, but I can't recall what they are now. But there's something to the effect that an average worker today is making less, if you take in inflation and the value of the currency, is making less than they were making in 1975. While companies like Amazon are, they almost doubled their wealth over the last 2 years.
Yeah. And I'm going to be clear here, just to be transparent. I benefit from Amazon, so I'm not. I just want to keep it a buck. Like,
well, I'll say this. I'm not a communist, and I'm not trying to hate on Amazon. If they can make their money, then I think that's great. They should make their money. But I put a question mark on their policy when I don't know how much this is Amazon. It's mostly places like Walmart. Where their employees can't make a living wage, and they have to go.
Right.
They're still counting on some form of government assistance while they're working full time at that business. And I think that happens to a certain degree at Amazon, and it definitely happens at places like Walmart. So that's where I put a question mark on their business policies.
I can understand that. I'm not going to go into it, but I used to work. I didn't work for Amazon. I was a vendor for Amazon. I worked in one of those warehouses you hear about, and I was responsible for hiring the people who worked there and sometimes letting them go. And I was there for 3 years. And so I saw it from the ground level of the guys, in my opinion, who are the backbone of Amazon. Like when you order something, it's regular people who are filling those orders, and they're in there 10 plus hours. And in my 50 some odd years of work, some of the hardest work I've ever seen in my life.
Is there?
Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, God.
Are they being paid appropriately though? Are they being paid a proper wage?
Well, that's a good question. You are paid your value, and you are paid what you accept.
See, it's
So, do they get? So I will say this: they're getting paid. It's hard work, no question about it. Should they get paid more? Absolutely. But you're gonna get paid what you allow yourself. Sometimes you got to stand up and fight for what you want to get paid.
That's true. People have fallen into a certain lethargy, a certain complacency, and they kind of accept some of the very same things that they may be protesting against. At the same time as they're protesting, they are accepting it.
And I've seen, the other part of Amazon where, when you go from beyond sort of the warehouse workers and you kind of go up the ladder a little bit, they're paying those people very well.
Yes.
And those people are working just as hard. Their value is a different. Yeah. It's not a labor value. It's other things that they bring to the table. I've seen that. I've seen guys start at the warehouse level and go up to the corporate level. I've literally seen that. So, I mean, not to say it can't happen, but, I've seen both sides of it, for me. And then, it got to the point where I was able to just sit and watch some of these meetings with these guys and really like just be a fly on the wall. And I understand why it is as successful as it is. I just think that the cities that they have Amazon in, I think it is up to these cities to put a certain expectation on these companies like Amazon to say, hey, you can come here and you're given jobs, but this is what we demand. We want this to happen. And maybe, I don't know if that's a union type thing to be able to happen, but I think people should fight for these things.
Well, it comes back to happen. It comes back to what people accept.
Yeah.
And you can also put it on the local government, state government, and even the federal government, what they accept when it comes to these tax breaks that Amazon gets.
Right.
which that's a
Right.
whole other thing. And you want to talk about fairness and what's right and what's wrong. That
Mm-hmm.
whole issue about how much taxes Amazon pays or doesn't pay. Oof. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a heavy subject.
Seattle
right
has
there.
tried to push back at Amazon about that, and Amazon was like, "Well, we don't have to be here." Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, so it's kind of shaky
difference.
ground. Yeah, because at the same time as you want Amazon to act right, you don't want them to leave because you pressure
Right.
them too much. So I get that.
And that's kind of happening a little bit here, because they can, again, there's probably many cities around the country that would love come on in, and you see a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But it's not just Amazon, but I think all of these types of companies just have to remember. Well, let me say this: Amazon and these companies get away with what they get away with because us, the people, continue to just pick our mouse up or our phone and are ordering away.
Well,
and
we're
not
helping
thinking
to
about,
create a monster. We're helping
yeah,
to create a monster.
we're not thinking about it's a real person packing our product.
Right.
And we don't care about that. We care about the best price and it's coming tomorrow. We don't care about the guys driving that van or their own car to deliver those products to us. We just ordered it this morning and it's here today. You don't even think about those are people doing that. You just think about the convenience and it's low price.
Well,
and I think it's going to only be until the people realize that there are real people doing the job. So all the stuff that we want, that things will change. And maybe we don't care about that. And, I don't know.
I think we care.
And I'll say this real quick. I'll say, I think in the next 10 years, these companies they already see this and they're working to eliminate that from the equation. So there won't be people doing that job anymore.
I was just going to say, you're talking about the delivery drivers and the people in the warehouse. Pretty soon, those are going to be drones and robots. The famous drone footage from Amazon that was on 60 Minutes years ago. Yeah. I worked at that place. Oh, did you?
They did that. Yeah, I worked at it. It was a test site. So all of those robots and shit, I saw them from day one. That's why I was like, okay, I already know what they're doing. Yeah, they got some stuff. They got something for your ass.
They do.
They got something coming. And this is going to hit across everything. There are a number of Amazon, I call them Amazon Go stores here. I don't know if you heard of these.
Yeah.
Where you just walk in, grab what you want off the shelf and walk out.
Yeah.
I remember the first one that started. Now there's probably 3 or 4 in the downtown area. And I can imagine they'll be able to take that when they fine tune that.
They'll be able to scale that up.
Hey, Walmart, here's that. You don't need nobody in that store. No. People can walk in there and grab what they want and it's charged. They're going to be like, hey, all of this Uber and all of this, the delivery driver, what they call it, gig economy, and all the truck drivers, that ain't going to last very long. They're going to automate them trucks, drive across the country.
What do you think those people are going to do, those employees? What's going to happen to them?
Man, listen. I've been saying this for years, but it's going to get crazy. They're going to have some kind of...
I think it's already getting crazy. We're seeing it.
People are
getting scared.
They're going to eliminate the warehouse job. They're going to eliminate a lot of these jobs. There's only be so many customer service jobs left, which I wouldn't be surprised if they come up with some kind of... they're just going to send you a check every month.
Yeah.
A living wage type of deal.
Universal pay, yeah.
Yeah, because the job's just not going to be there.
They're going to have to. Well, here comes that socialist welfare state that nobody wants to have in America.
Yeah, well, you got capitalism on one hand, and you got things being automated.
But isn't it kind of ironic? Because this automation is because of capitalistic motivation, but it's going to force... It's going to, people are going to have a wage. People are going to have to be able to survive. You need money to survive. Retail is growing, but the jobs in retail are going to disappear. So that's going to bring about a massive socialistic, if you will, shift at the same time as capitalism grows.
And I think we're dealing, and you talk about the experiment of this area. I think they're normalizing homelessness and normalizing, like they just had a big thing on the news. They're taking these hotels downtown now, and they're just giving them to the homeless people. You can live in there, free food, free room on board. You have a hotel room. So you're basically eliminating. They don't have a job. They don't have any money, but we give you a place to live and here's some food. And you're in one of the richest cities in America.
They're paving the way.
People homeless on the streets.
They're paving the way towards a universal wage. They're paving the way towards an even larger welfare state. And I don't know. I live here in Norway, and it's totally different. This thing that we have in America, a lot of people have in America, where they think we're the best. Our model is the way to live. Everyone should be doing it our way. Be quiet, you socialist countries. Well, first of all, like Norway, for example, is a social democracy, or democratic socialism is what they use. And basically all that means is that we care about each other and nobody's going to be left by the wayside. That's basically all it means. And I'm thinking that if you look at it on a household level, don't you want your entire family to be healthy and strong? Don't you want the weakest in your family to be as strong as possible? And you do everything you can to make sure that that happens. So if we think that way on a household level, why can't we expand that to a national level? And when I say we, even though I'm sitting here in Norway, I'm talking about the United States, my country. I don't know. I think people are going to patriot themselves to death. That's the term I use. You're going to patriot yourself to death. This idea that America is superior. America is superior in many ways, but America could also open her eyes and learn a little bit from other countries, because America does not do everything in the best possible way. Why is it that when my kids are born here in Norway, I can have up to, 9 months away from my job, and my job is there when I'm done after those 9 months, and I'm getting paid 85% of my wage while I'm gone?
Shit.
Why is that? It's because they care about the family unit. And we pay taxes for that here so that those kind of things can be done. We pay taxes for it, but it's not like that money is just disappearing into thin air, because I get that money back when I have kids. I get that money back when I need medical services. So it's little things like that if the American people were willing to bend a little bit and open their eyes and see how other countries do things, America would be a better place. And Seattle would be a better place.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. You know, as crazy as, sort of make Seattle come out to be, again, I still have that same sort of, Prince mentality and just the mentality that we've always kind of had in the neighborhood. I'm not losing. Right. I'm not, no matter what they got going on, I'm going to go out there and do, I'm going to be working, I'm going to figure it out. So I don't, even with all of that, I never feel like, oh no, we're not going to make it, or it's doomed or something. I'm like, oh, cool. It's always been tough. So
just find a new way.
For me, I always do like Bruce Willis when he's in Die Hard. Welcome to the party, pal. Like, hey, we've been struggling since day one. Oh well. we always make it. We always make it. We always do stick together. I just think, it's hitting more people. Things are changing, but society has always changed.
That's very true.
I don't look at things in a doom kind of way. I try to stay optimistic, but it's just like, you can see how things are changing. I'm always like, to me, my whole thing is like, listen, man, I always say this in a joking matter. Google is free. Google Docs is free to everybody. So the computer is free to me. When they started the internet, I was like, oh, okay, they should have never had let me get a hold of this, because now I'm about to eat. Like, I don't have to, there's no gatekeeper. Cool. I've been waiting for this. Are you kidding me? So to me, I don't see the computers and all this as just to be on here chatting and looking. I see money. Creation tool.
I see money. I see creation. I see freedom. I see contact and connection. Yeah, absolutely. It's not fun and games. I don't look at the internet as fun and games at all.
Yeah, I'm not as much as I like to intake, I'm trying to push out to grow. So to me, the gate's wide open. This is why I tell my son, man, are you kidding? Like if I had access to all of this stuff, this is great.
Yeah.
Like, let's get busy. You'll be as successful as you want to be.
How old's your son?
He is 13.
13, yeah. I have a 13-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, and then I have my daughter with her kids in the States.
Awesome.
So the kids here are right at that age where, I start to tell them, these kind of things about opportunity, about making your own way. Hey, you can have your little fun on TikTok, but you ever think about trying to monetize that? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those kind of things. They're right at that age, especially my daughter, to where I can start having those conversations with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have my oldest is 18, and she just getting ready to graduate. She's got accepted to college, so she's like, taking it to a whole other level.
Nice.
And my youngest is 5, a little girl, and I always try to show them that you can have a job, but you can also create your own opportunities too. Long time ago, my oldest, when I was doing my duplication business, I would just have her stay with me.
Okay.
I'd bring it to the office as a young age. So she just saw that was, she saw, okay, daddy, he got his own business and he's doing his thing and we in here working together. This is another opportunity you could do. You don't have to do this, but it just goes to show that there's so many different things you can do.
You're leading by example. You're leading by example as a father should. Yeah.
I try to. And I'm not perfect. Let me be fair.
No, we are so flawed.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, man. I mean, Seattle is. I would say come to Seattle is a very beautiful place.
It is. It sure is.
Definitely nice. I guess like any other city, it has its issues. But if you're a young person and you got some skills, man, you can come out here and
some kind of technology, tech degree, computer science,
or just there's so many different. It's tech, but tech bleeds into anything.
Yeah.
So you could really come out here and get down if you highly motivated.
Yeah.
That's my whole thing. Like, so that's how I've been able to.
Speaking of motivation,
I never went to college. Didn't go to school.
Oh, you didn't? No college?
Not at all. I went to college of Barnes and Nobles. That's what I took.
There you go.
I would get the books, take them home. Oh, okay. HTML, got it.
But
video, got it. Photoshop, got it.
But I feel you on that. That's what I tell people. I'm gonna have to manage with the brain power that I have now because I ain't going back to school. So it's all about reading. It's all about self-education. And again, going back to the internet, the possibilities for self-education are endless.
Man, I always say this: we was blessed the day we was born. We got
Amen. Yes.
God gave us this incredible brain. Now, what you choose to do with it,
that's another story.
But this bad boy is a cold piece of machinery. Like, you can come up with some of the most incredible stuff in the world.
You speaking the truth. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why I'm like, okay, cool.
And I enjoy the journey. I enjoy learning. Doing this podcast, talking to different people. I got a crazy variety of guests. No one guest is the same as the previous. And it's all about sucking in that knowledge, learning.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, man. Yeah, we can accomplish so many things. And
what's coming for you? What's coming for you? What are your plans? What is a project or a goal that you have that you're currently working on? Where are you headed? Tell the people where Michael Dean is going.
Yeah, well, one of the things I've been working on it for a long time. I mentioned the book thing. To me, it's a passion thing, but I feel like it's just one of those things. I think I've been working my whole life to put the message of what I'm trying to convey with that.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. I spent a lot of my years of life doing music and stuff, and doing that, and then getting into podcasting. I really understand now the power behind just podcasting or doing what we're doing in terms of getting out the ideas. I really want to inspire people that they can do whatever it is that they want to do, and so I always try to talk to different people. I think storytelling is a very powerful medium in general.
It is.
And, so to me, it was like, okay. And, I got that from, I used to work, when I was doing my duplication, I did a whole series of albums for, different tribes, Native American tribes.
Wow.
And it basically was, I met this one guy, he had this company, and all he does is spotlight Native American art. But then we got the idea to meet with different elders and have them tell the stories. I mean, that's how they do with their culture in general, how they tell the history is through the spoken word.
Yes.
But I invite, so we would do recording sessions in my house, and we would bring these elders in. I would just, I'm doing the engineer work, but I'm sitting there listening
and learning
to them, and I'm learning. I'm like, wow, okay, this is incredible storytelling. This is since the beginning of time.
Wow, what a great experience that must have been.
Yeah, man. I mean, got to the point, and that's how I learned a lot of stuff, because there was opportunities. So I was like, okay, I need to learn how to do Photoshop and some of this stuff. So I learned that. Then it was like, oh, we want to do a DVD. I was like, okay, I got to learn not only how to film it, but I'm going to edit it off of the DVD.
Are you like me? You'll take a job like that and you don't really know how to do it, but you figure it out by the time you got to start doing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We think a lot alike. We think a lot alike.
Learned a lot of that type of stuff. And then, like I said, just the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
The podcast is storytelling.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Getting people to talk about their life and, what can we learn from their experiences? And so for me, the book is sort of I don't know if it's the end game of that, but I feel it's like, it's the same way I take it back to Star Wars. Like, you can look at Star Wars and that it's just a space adventure, or you can look at it and it's like, man, there's some themes in this that just work for humanity at all times.
Yes.
And I want to be able to have something like that, where if you read it on its surface, it's a fun thing. But if you really look at it, it's like, wow, okay. It's a bigger thing.
I have a good reference to what you just said there about getting into the depth of things. You've seen the movie Jungle Fever, probably?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Now, at the end of that movie, the prostitute comes up to him, says she'll do this, that, and the other for $2. He hugs her and then screams, no, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the movie fades out. Well, my son was sitting there with the remote control, and he jumped up right away to go take the remote control and turn it off. Now, I know, because I've seen the movie a ton of times, I know that, first of all, that movie moves me in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of I think Spike Lee is a genius.
Oh, Spike is.
And that movie really moves me. It's funny, but it also moves me deeply. Mm-hmm. And also I get a lot of opportunities to make fun of my blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegian wife during that movie. So, but the movie moves me, and I'll remember from watching it so many times. I know that at the end, when the credits are rolling, Stevie Wonder is singing that beautiful song with those beautiful lyrics,
which
telling
song
a message.
Now it's 3 words, is it?
No.
I remember I have the soundtrack.
Why am I drawing a blank now? Just check out the soundtrack. It's a close. Okay. It's a song that goes over the closing credits, and I'd say to my son, "Don't turn that off yet. Didn't this movie do anything to you? Look, listen to this song and watch these words." And then he was like, "Oh, okay." And my daughter, same thing, because she had picked up her cell phone and was getting ready to start texting right away. And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then they see there's more to, take a deep breath and catch the depth of this piece of art.
Mm-hmm. That's funny you mentioned that, because I was, yesterday I was leaving my apartment, and in the lobby they have music playing. And yesterday when I was walking out, they were playing Stevie Wonder, These 3 words from Jungle
See,
Fever.
now I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna Google it right now. I cannot believe I don't remember the name of that song.
You like me, you can't let it go. He's like,
oh man, let's see, Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, Spike is, oh man. I just bought the 4K of Do the Right Thing last month, and that movie is I remember it was incredible back then, but watching it now, where you can, it's in pristine, made me cry, man. I just was like,
Feeding Off the Love of the Land, of course. Feeding Off the Love of the Land is the name of that song. Anybody listening, just go and I want people to turn off the lights, put on a set of headphones, be quiet, and just listen to that song. Stevie Wonder, Feeding Off the Love of the Land. Beautiful song, and it just fits at the closing of that movie. But yeah, and so we're kind of on a Spike Lee run right now. The week before, last Friday, we watched Jungle Fever.
Okay.
And I'm making a very conscious, I mean, I've always done this, but especially now, I'm making a conscious effort to teach my 2 kids here as much as I can about all things Black American.
Okay.
Because I feel that it's important that they get as much of that part of their background and heritage as they can, because who else are they going to learn that from over here in Norway? They're only going to learn it from me, and they're going to learn what their teachers at school try to teach them, but what do they know?
You say the same thing about America, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, okay, but especially, and no offense, Norwegians, but especially here in Norway, what do they know? You know,
right?
So I don't know. That's something, and I've said this before to people, that since I've lived here, I've been here in Norway for 19 years. It'll be 19 years in June, and seems like the longer I'm here, the more I'm aware of my Blackness.
How so?
It's this strange feeling that I should be doing something when I see the racial unrest over the last decade. When I see the level of contention between the Black American citizenry and police. And I want to get involved, and I want to do something. I want to say something. I want to affect. And it's a strange feeling of helplessness being removed from all of that by distance, because I live here.
I got you.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a strange feeling. It really is.
I guess I feel like we have to try to embrace, it doesn't sound corny, we have to try to embrace humanity. Like, I just don't think.
But that's not corny, because isn't that really all it takes?
That is really all it takes. I just think we don't see each other as real people at times. You know, it's easy to put this person in that box, and this, or you're Black, you're white,
right,
this, or Asian, whatever. But we are humans, man. Like, and I'm not trying to blow my book up, but I'm going to mention the theme of this book, though, is really, I take away the Black, white, whatever nationality, and we're just human beings on planet Earth. And I always felt like if there was a movie or something that dealt with, what if them aliens came to Earth, snatched up some humans, and took them to their other planet and made them as slaves? If we watched a movie like that, off the top, we're going to root for the humans. We want the humans to be free. We see them as our own people, right? And I feel like and my thing is, well, I mean, that's kind of like with Africa and some slaves and stuff, but we put all of these categories. There's too many
labels. Yeah, there's too many categories and too many labels.
Yeah, but if it was just some aliens versus humans, you'd be like, yeah, we're on the same team, man. Right is right. Free those people. And my thing is, the show and the book is like, well, that happens, but what if there were humans who went to that alien planet, and when they got there, the humans looked at those humans from Earth like, how come you're not praising, you know, this religion that these aliens set up for us? How come you don't want to look like the aliens? And you would be like, are you crazy? Like, we're humans.
Right, exactly.
We got to defeat the bad guy.
But
you know,
but again, I really think it is that simple. If we can just see the humanity in each other.
Right.
And this also goes, this goes both ways. I can't look at all police officers and put them all in the same box.
Right.
You know, I see what the Chauvin guy allegedly did in Minnesota, and that's him. He's the one who made that mistake. He's the one that played a hand, allegedly, I have to say that, in the death of George Floyd. I can't say that all police officers are bad, because they're not. I know that for a fact.
Right.
And then in the same breath, in the same breath, people also have to recognize the humanity of black people. Because I will say this, that there are way too many police. Here's how I'll say it. There are way too many police officers who have way too little recognition of the humanity for black people. That's the problem right there. And again, that's not all police, but way too many of them have too little recognition for the humanity of black people. And that's why we are where we are today.
I would say, particularly in America, there are way too many people, period, who fall into that, whether they're black people or whoever else. Because I do think that all people have been influenced by stereotypes and just the constant pushing of imagery and media, that it has affected everybody. It's not only just affected the police officers, but it's also affected the victims of the police officers, and it's affected the people who are on the sidelines. They all don't see the humanity of black people. There's a lot of black people that don't see the humanity of black people. And I understand.
Look at all the shootings in Chicago. Look at all the shootings in Chicago. That right there tells us that black people also have to take care of their business when it comes to recognizing their own humanity.
Right. And we're all have been influenced. I just think that's the honest thing we sometimes need to get with. Like, listen, we're all the victims of this sickness, or this, this sort of mind thought that certain people don't have the same humanity as others. And that's the problem to me. Like, when we can admit to that and start to work toward that, then we can get through. Because again, it's not just the police. It's the people that are not the police, but they have that either subconscious or conscious. They have that fear as well. I'm a black man, and I've had times in my life where I don't want to walk on that side of the street. I see those young brothers over there, and I got a question: where do I get that from? Why do I think that? Well, I'm just as influenced by the foolishness I see on the media as everybody else. So it's a sickness of
I grew up, like I told you earlier, I grew up way out in the country, so I've never walked down the street and seen a bunch of black brothers before. So I can't identify with that. No, I do know what you're saying. We all have way too much fear in our hearts. That's what it is.
And
too much fear.
And where does it come from? Where does it come from? Where does that thought come from?
Are we consuming too much social media? Should people turn away from Facebook and Instagram and Twitter?
Well, this existed before any of those things came into play.
But right? I'm saying maybe it's gotten worse. Since the prevalence of social media has become what it is, I believe it's gotten worse.
I will say that it has definitely put the trauma of these events on Front Street.
Yes.
It is not just, oh, those black people just keep saying this thing happened. That didn't really happen. Well,
now they see
actually, now you get to see actually it did
now
happen.
They see it, and that's a good
thing. Because the shootings we see today, they've always been happening. It's just that we never had receipts.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think there's more police killing unarmed citizens now than there were 15, 20, 30 years ago. I think we just see it more. So we agree on that. But there is something with social media that then, okay, we see these things happening, and then social media does something to us to where we start arguing where there shouldn't be an argument about these issues.
I would question to say if it's not an argument. I think that before we just never without the lack of information, you had no reason to ask a question.
That's true.
Because you didn't know it existed. I don't think you shouldn't ask a question. So to me, it's like, well, you're seeing a little bit more truths than we're used to seeing. I think too, it's a byproduct of you have a generation who knows a time before that, and there's a generation who was born into it. I think maybe 20 years from now, the generation who was fascinated by social media, which I think I am a generation of, will not exist anymore.
That's true.
And kids are just, what's the big deal? Social media was here the day I was born.
Right. Totally different perspective. Yeah.
There's a reason why cell phones sell crazily. This is most people who are not alive when these existed. This is fascinating to me. Like, if you gave me this as a kid, like, are you crazy? What is it? It does videos. But there's going to be a generation where this has been here from the day they was born, and it's not going to seem like it won't be as fascinating. Like color TV was fascinating to people when that came out. When TV came out, that was fascinating. Like, I can watch this at home. Oh, the influx of but then I was born with TV on. So I've always watched TV.
How often do you buy a new cell phone? How long will you hold on to that before you buy it?
Sure. So the one I had before this, I had it for over a year. I'm not the top of the line. I didn't used to be I got to have the new, but when I realized what I could do, again, for me, oh, you mean I can do video? Yeah, I got to have that. Why would I not have that? But, I guess I've always had cell phones. I remember I had a pocket PC back in the day. Which was very early version of the cell phone of today. So I guess I'm always had tech stuff to some degree. I just found, again, they were fascinating to me because of what you could do with them. And I remember a time when you couldn't do that. Like you had to buy a whole bunch of stuff to be able to do video, and you had to have a mixer, and you had to have this. And
I look at
have one thing.
I look at how my thoughts around the cell phone have changed. When I got my first one, I want to say it was in late 2001, and I needed to get it for my job. I had to get it. They told me I had to have it, and I hated it. I hated carrying that thing around. It was a pain in the ass. And then here I am today. Now, I'm not the kind of person who every time a new iPhone comes out, I have to buy a new one. I have this one that I bought about a year ago, roughly, and I'll keep it until it doesn't work anymore. And then I'll buy a new one. But I do feel naked and lost if I don't have this. If I leave the house without it, I feel that little panic, that little flutter in my chest. Oh my God, I lost I don't have my phone with me. Or a couple times when I misplace it, I'll go crazy trying to find it. So I went from this guy who hated having to carry that thing around in 2001 to where I can't go anywhere without this.
Essential, yeah. It's hard for me to think, like, how would we, like, all the stuff that I do now, I'm like, God, I can't pull up an address to some place. I can't get directions.
I don't remember phone numbers anymore. I used to remember everybody's phone number. I remember my phone number. I remember my wife's phone number, and one of my best friends that I collaborate with music on, I remember his phone number. That's it. I don't remember any other phone numbers.
I think it was because now your brain understands there's no need for me to retain
it got lazy.
this.
Yeah,
I can do something else. I mean, we adapt. I say people, we're going to adapt. And I can only imagine in 20 years, we'll look back at these phones. And
50 years. We're going to do another podcast episode, remember?
Well, no, I'm just saying in terms of technology, we'll look back at this and be like, man, those phones that we had in 2020 or 2021, they weren't nothing compared to what you're able to do, even if they even have phones at that point. Maybe might be implants or something. You never know. But I mean,
we'll talk about it in our podcast in 50 years. Talk about
we'll probably be blown away by the changes.
Talk about what do people think of Michael Jackson and Prince, and what do they think of cell phones in 2021?
Well, I was talking to my son, and he was like, "Oh, there'll probably be flying cars and stuff," and I said, no, there won't. Because I was like, if you go back and look at when I was a kid, what we thought we were going to be doing in 2021, we're not there at all.
We're not there.
And the things that we thought are super impractical and would make no sense. I was like, the innovations that will come are things that you're probably not even thinking about. And they won't be, I mean, I said, it's impractical to have cars flying because then everyone has to have, flying lessons, and that would make no sense. But I said, what you probably will have is no one will have a car.
Yeah.
Like you'll be penalized to drive.
Probably.
Because I'm like, if you think about it rationally, a computer and an AI program is going to be way better driver than a person because it's totally predictable versus having some nut behind the wheel.
Well, they're working on that technology. They're working on that technology already. So I bet you it's right around the corner. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like it's going to be things like that we will see. The automation will probably be out of control. Well, not necessarily in a bad way, but that will be the things that we're probably not thinking about.
Right.
That 20 years you'll walk into 20 years you'll probably be like, remember you used to go to the grocery store? You're like, what is that?
Yeah, what is that?
What's a grocery store? I mean, you used to go to the store and you get a cart and you would put the stuff in the cart and then you get in line and wait in line and pay for everything. I can imagine that would be totally eliminated where everything would just, you'd order it and your groceries are delivered to your door. Like, why would you waste time going to the grocery store? I see stuff like that.
See, and then it's also different from country to country. You know, I'm born and raised in Ohio. Except for my military service, I've always lived in the States until I met my wife, married, and moved here. And we'll sit and we'll compare, and she's only a couple months younger than me, so we're the same age, and yet some of the references I have are totally unknown to her. Something as simple as, a song might come on the radio, and I'll be like, oh yeah, remember that video when it came out? And she's like, but they didn't see MTV here for like the first 10 years of MTV. They just didn't have it. So the cultural references, what might be a good cell phone in the States may be a piece of junk over here, because the technology is also different from country to country.
Right.
So social references, Japan or Asia in general, China.
Yeah, well, we joked about it earlier, but I could see how we were talking about music people, and they kind of start to have this stuff now. There is a semi-popular AI rapper.
Oh, really?
There are AI music stars, and I think that's only going to get bigger. And I would not be surprised if 20 years.
Where have I been? I haven't heard anything about that.
I heard of this a couple weeks ago. He almost looks like a knockoff of Tekashi 6ix9ine, if you're familiar who he looks like. He kind of looks like a little bit like that, but he's literally not a real person. And he's got.
I hope he looks better than Tekashi 6ix9ine.
He looks very weird, but he's got an online presence.
Really?
He's got a lot of followers. And this is something that we've seen in Japan, different cultures where they have there's a certain term that they call for it, where they've already had this for a long time. But I think it's getting to the technology now is you're starting to see these artists, these CGI artists doing interviews.
Okay.
And they're really seem like real people.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's to me is probably going to be the next thing, because again, they are predictable. They are controllable. Why would you have an artist who may get big and may get powerful and rich and get some control, and you have no control over him? He could say and do anything. Why not get somebody that'll work all the time, and you can guide the narrative of that artist, and he's never going to say anything that would disrupt his corporate opportunities, finance opportunities, and it would work. If they can get it.
The technology with CG and all that stuff, you can have a concert. It doesn't have to just be a video thing. You could actually fill up a stadium. You can have something there for people to look at
around the world at the same time, right? He's got a concert in Chicago and one in China at the same night. It's CGI. He can be.
You should write
he's a workhorse.
You should write a book about that.
Well, but I'm saying
but they're doing
that. Yeah. Wow. Which begs the question: when you get to the point where you start to accept that, how far do you think we'd push that? Would we ever accept? Could be 70 years down the line, when there's a company that has the financial power of a Google, Amazon combined, and they've built up a person that could run for a particular office or something, and people believe that person. And we've had many years to accept that. We accept pop culture people that are not real people, and we accept it. I could see the human brain. We as a people could accept a not real person who has our ideals that we want to support.
Well, there's the key.
Push them to.
There's the key. If it lines up with your own thought process, your own beliefs, your own ideals, I do believe people could accept that. But then what about the other side, the other political party who doesn't agree with that thing? They're going to play on that. Well, yeah, they could just have theirs.
It could come down. Again, it all come down to money and power. So whoever dominates the landscape of media or information, they could push whatever the hell they want to. I mean, again, it could take many years, but it gets to the point where you accept that as a reality.
Well, that may not be so far out in the future.
Imagine a Donald Trump type of a person who was fine-tuned and didn't have the bluntness and the ridiculousness of a Donald Trump, but had the core values that are shared with that type of thought, but it was smoothed out and it was a control and it had smart people behind it psychologically who knew what you would respond to and how you would take this message. Maybe they won't take it from this real person because he has flaws and he could be exposed down the line for some shit he did. But this AI person doesn't have the background and doesn't have sex tape or nothing. So we can they accept that. There won't be any, there'll be no more Me Too's. You eliminate all of that because it's not a real person. So they can never be exposed. Then I can see that, they'll accept that. And we don't never have to worry about him getting canceled because he's uncancelable.
That may not be another Donald Trump or two, and we might be actually getting everybody behind that idea.
I mean, there's so many people that go along with his the core stuff of what he's talking about without the foolishness.
Yeah.
They would accept it if it was if they had a better pitch person on it.
Was there anything about Donald Trump that you found appealing? Anything at all?
Well, I would say, let's see. How do you answer a question like that? Because listen,
I'm a terrible podcast host.
No, you're doing some setup questions. I like it. I see what you're doing. I don't support or ride with Donald Trump at all, but I will point to you 10 years ago, or probably less, there was a lot of people who did. What did Donald Trump mean to, let's just say, the hip hop culture 10, 20 years ago? It was a totally different thing. Shit, Prince had a song called Donald Trump, and he wasn't using him in a negative connotation. He was using it as, you would aspire to the riches of a most successful man. Baby girl, I'm the Donald Trump black version. Yeah. We understand what he meant to people back then.
Sure.
I think he is the living embodiment of what I just said.
Yeah.
He was the core values of what he was, and then he became this reality crazy type thing. But he was able to do that because people loved him before. But then when he started to, I'm gonna take this and run with this platform, talking points, then you realize, whoa.
Do you think he meant all the bullshit he came with during his presidency? Do you think he meant that? Or do you think he was just saying these things because he knew it was popular and he thought it would keep him in power?
I believe all politicians do that.
Do you believe that he did it to a higher degree than most politicians? In other words, are you saying you don't think he believed any of the stuff he said? You think it was all part of his act to stay in power?
I think he did what all politicians do.
Okay.
At the core of what he did, in my opinion, what most politicians, I'm going to tell these people what I think is going to make me win. So most of them, even as people I would support, I don't know if they really believe, have in their heart what they're saying, but they know that to say that they can get a group of people to vote for them.
Yes.
That's what they do.
And that's why, as good of a figure for America that I think Barack Obama was, I didn't put him up on this pedestal and on this altar because in the end, he was a politician and I just couldn't get down with him like that. Again, I think he did. I think he did I think he did a good job. I think he meant well. I think he did as good as he could with the cards he was dealt. But in the end, he's another politician.
He's another politician. I salute Barack Obama. I salute his family.
Absolutely.
I'm going to side with just the imagery. And if I would know them, even if I didn't necessarily believe everything they said, I would vote for him and cheer it anyway. Because I think psychologically what he meant was more important.
Sure.
At least to me and my people.
To me too. So yes.
I'm all with it. But I mean, he's got to play the game just like everybody else. Yeah. He's not going to come in here and this is America. Yeah. So he ain't going to come in here and just change the game unless he really wanted to have the smoke And I don't fault him for not, because that's a hard position.
Well, having the GOP go so hard into opposition as they did with him, that's why I say I think he did the best he could with the cards he was dealt. And the results of what he did, I think, was a good thing for America. I believe that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do too. I think it was one of those things that it was like I say with Star Wars and stuff, it was that turned the light on somebody. They saw that, I can get to that level. It's a reality. Yep. Yeah. Okay, cool. So it opens the door for the next Obama. It's going to be on even a doper level, or it's going to be a lady or somebody else.
Could it be?
But it just opens the door.
Could it be Kamala Harris? Could she be the next big Barack Obama-ish thing?
With the right machine behind it? Absolutely. Again, I feel like they can build up anybody they want.
They most certainly can.
If they gave it the whole package and say, hey, we got such and such is behind you, we got this thing lined up, we're going to the moon. Yeah, they can make anybody. If they can make Donald Trump be that,
I was just going to say,
they can make anybody.
If he can be as popular as he was and is, then anybody can do something similar. Anybody.
Yeah, you can take a clown from reality TV.
Because personally, I don't see what was likable about that man in the slightest bit. Morally, politically, I don't see it. But there must have been some. I shouldn't say must have been. There is some wisdom and some brain power in that man and what he did. He was able to capitalize on that thing that allowed him. No, he was able to capitalize on that thing in America that he appealed to. That thing, whatever you want to call that.
It just goes to show the influence of media, man. Like, again, you can accept anything if they position it right. They can push whatever they want. And that was a power to show how people were influenced by, they saw him on The Apprentice. There was a certain amount of people that was, he's been running businesses on TV. He must be smart. And then there was sort of the racist people that, he's sort of dog whistling. So that, they know exactly what they were doing. But that's why I said the media influences people. People don't like to hear that. I don't know why, but it does, man. For good or for bad, but it does.
Speaking of influence, how would you categorize your podcast? Entertainment, education, comedy? Informational,
conversational. I would categorize it as it's either me and somebody else having conversations, or me and a group of people having conversations. It's almost like a barbershop. It's just like frank, real conversations. Yeah. My whole thing is I always try to be, if you met me in real life, it would be just like the podcast. I would talk the same way. We'd have the same kind of conversations, because that's how it started. Right. And that's the only way I know how to do it.
Right.
That's why I always say, when somebody says, you sure you want to have this guest on? They were on such and such show. Yeah, but they weren't talking to me.
Right, exactly.
So it's going to be a different conversation. I don't care if it's the same information. It's not going to be, we're not going to say it the way you would or that person did.
I don't even research my guests that much beyond what it is about them that interests me. You know what I mean? Because I want that that first conversation, I want it to be as organic as possible. You and I are just talking. We're just throwing subjects out, and we're talking and giving our opinions, getting to know each other, right? Mm-hmm. And then with further episodes, if I come on your podcast or if you come back here again, the research is even less necessary, because we're getting to know each other the more often we talk. And that organic conversational thing is, I don't want to say that some of these more educational podcasts are bad. It's just that I prefer the organic conversational type of, kind of like what Joe Rogan does. He just gets people on, they just talk.
I love those type. If I like the person, that's the thing. If I like the personality, then I can listen to them damn near.
You have to like them. Absolutely. Yeah. I can't sit for an hour or however long and listen to a podcast host that I just don't like. If I don't like their personality, I just can't do it. Nope.
Now, but then I would say the other ones I like there are some informational ones that aren't about the personality. It's purely just about the topic at hand that I can find fascinating if that topic is fascinating to me. I'm trying to think. There was the ones by Wonderly where they do business wars. I don't know if you heard of business wars.
Yeah.
I love those because if it's a topic, how Netflix versus Blockbuster, the story of that. Okay, I'm into that. I want to hear about that. So those are more sort of scripted narrative type shows. There's a great one they did about New Jack Swing. Just how that started with Teddy and Guy and all that. And
now something like that I could listen to. Yeah,
Taraji P. Henson narrates it, but it's a story. They telling a story. So I like
Taraji is the narrator?
Yes.
I'm gonna start listening.
Yeah, there's some good stuff out there. There's some great stuff out there for sure.
So you have you ever thought about trying to bust into radio, which is a cousin to podcasting?
Yes, I've definitely thought about it. I feel like
you might lose control. You might lose a little bit of control.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I struggle a little bit because I like to talk about what I like to talk about.
Yeah.
And if I'm forced to sort of talk about things I'm not really into, the passion isn't there as much. And I like podcasting. I like the control of it.
You choose your own guests and everything. And as a radio host, you probably wouldn't be able to do that all the time.
No, you're sort of locked into a thing. Now, if someone was like, we want you to just do exactly what you do on the podcast, then possibly, okay, I could maybe get into that. But yeah, I've thought about it. I mean, I'm a talk radio guy. That's what I listened to before I started podcasting. I still listen to it sometimes. I study talk radio. I understand it. And there's things that I do that I've gotten from that.
I served 4 years active duty in the U.S. Marines. And then after that, to get my head together and figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I took a job as a truck driver.
Okay.
I did that for 18 months, drove all over the United States. And that's when I got into listening to talk radio. There was a guy out of, I believe it was WGN out of Chicago, Jay Marvin. He used to do a talk show, politically based.
Okay.
And that's when I fell in love with the concept of being on a microphone and talking and actually inspiring and moving people and being inspired, because he would have, Joe Blow from the street could call in, and it wasn't like ask one question and then you're done. He would have people call in and he'd talk with them for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And that exchange fascinated me. And
that's something it seems like they don't do in radio, at least in the talk radio here. They eliminated the caller.
Yeah, this was back
portion of it.
When was I driving? This was like from 94 to 96.
Okay.
And then I kept listening to it when I stopped driving. I kept listening to Jay Marvin. I listened to him up until, when I moved here, 2001, 2002. He was still doing it. I think he's retired now. But that was the main guy. I couldn't get into Rush Limbaugh. Again, the personality thing. I don't like his personality. I couldn't listen to anything that he had to say. Howard Stern was also a little...
I used to listen to Howard heavy.
I used to listen to him, but sometimes I had to go away because he just got too much.
Right. I dig it.
Too much.
Yeah, there was a period where I used to listen to a lot of that. I got into him really late. But
Tom Joyner?
Yeah. So they didn't have that here, so I know who he is, but it's nothing I was ever able to listen to.
Okay.
I think what I would listen to. There's a lot of those local guys that I like, and I don't even agree with most of what they be saying, but they are very entertaining to me.
Yeah, I like that conversation. The conversation can be entertaining. I don't have to agree with the subject matter. Again, it boils down to the personality. I could have listened to Rush Limbaugh for entertainment purpose, or maybe, even to learn what the so-called other side is thinking.
Sure.
But he as a person was just so despicable to me. I couldn't do it. I think I tried to listen to him maybe 2 or 3 times, and I never made it longer than 10 minutes, and I would have to stop. And after 2 or 3 tries, I gave up. Couldn't listen to him. And that's not because he's from the other side of the political spectrum either. It's because of the way... I can listen to any political opinion, and I can discuss and I can enjoy that discussion, but it has to be put forward in a manner that encourages discussion. Somebody like Rush Limbaugh tries to shove things down your throat. A lot of people you see on social media try to shove things down your throat. You're an idiot if you don't agree with me. You're stupid. You're this, you're that. You know, the name calling and all that. And I can't, I just don't have time for that. But I love listening to an opposing opinion. I love it.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I would say, you know, right now, at least the local radio, it was never any black people on the radio. So I would listen to it, but I would never like get all into it. And it wasn't really until podcasting really started to click in where I started to see, and then like with YouTube, oh, okay, now we're getting our voices out there. So I really love the Charlemagne's.
Oh yeah, yes, absolutely.
I like he's very controversial to people. Tariq Nasheed, I think he is hilarious.
D.L. Hughley.
When I get to hear him, sometimes I think he's really good. I think Joe Budden is good. There's a lot of great people out there now. Whether or not I even agree with everything they say, I just love that it has more things that I can relate to that I'm listening to it now, and that we are really adopting to this. Even like YouTube really didn't, early podcasting wasn't a lot of black people podcasting or YouTubing. Now in the last couple of years, I always tell people, podcasting is a new record deal. You know, everybody had to get a record deal back in the day. Now everybody's podcasting, and I love it. Like, okay, great. Get on YouTube. There's so many different diverse voices now. I love it.
And it can be a good path towards financial freedom, especially once you get that monetization on, especially YouTube.
Absolutely,
get that monetization, and people. I don't know. I hope more people get into podcasting, more black people especially, because you know, if you're sitting there in your little bubble, or maybe it's a big bubble, and you're complaining about not being heard, there's a solution to that. There's a solution to that.
They didn't crack the code on that. Yeah,
podcasting is the solution. Yeah.
Podcasting, there's Patreon. There's so many other things now, and I see we're all over those things. I love it. Yeah. I love the whole thing. It's the door is wide open. It is beautiful. It's just beginning. It's just
the door is wide open, and there's a beautiful view.
Yeah. That's why I tell people, find that thing that you're into. Oh, you like. How much Kool-Aid do you put in the sugar podcast? Listen, there'll be somebody that's going to want to listen to that. And you'd be the one surprised. To lock that down.
You would be surprised. Yeah. I've been doing this for 14 months now, and I'm not one to go back and try and rewind and say, oh, I wish I would have done it sooner, but I wish I would have started sooner. I don't usually say those things, but I wish I would have started this sooner, because it's good therapy. I'll put it to you that way.
Okay.
It's good therapy after my son's passing, and the people who I've met, the people who I've spoken with, the feedback that I've gotten from people, it gives me a sense of community that I didn't have before I started podcasting.
Yeah, man, it's a powerful thing, and getting your voice out there, and the more you do, the better you get at it. Yeah. And once you start to see the effects of it, is I remember I was in Minneapolis one time. I was on the street in front of Paisley Park. I was walking down the street, and a car is going down the street, and the guy yells out the window, "Working like a job." I was like, wow, that's awesome.
I love it.
I was like, okay, I love it. We out here doing it. So you start to see little things like that, and you're like, wow, okay.
It really sunk in for me that I was doing something right. The first time I got contacted by a national level media outlet.
Oh, wow.
I got contacted by a Norwegian news station. And here the news goes on a national, it's a nationalized news network. So everybody in the country sees it. And I got on a morning show with these people who I had been seeing on TV, never imagining that I'd be sitting on that couch across the table from this woman who was interviewing me about my podcast.
Wow. I know
Blew
that
my
had to
mind.
feel
It's still, I
great.
get chills just talking about it. But that was the first time where I really, because podcasting, it can be kind of lonely because it's not always easy to access that feedback. It's not always easy. Not everybody comments on YouTube. Not
Right.
everybody will send you an e-post, even when you email, even when you ask them. I said e-post. I'm combining Norwegian and English. I'm sorry. In Norwegian, they say e-post instead of email. Anyway,
E-post.
yeah, e-post. So not everybody is so quick to give that feedback, right? And then all of a sudden, a national television station is calling me in, and that's when I knew I was doing the right thing. I love this. This is. I don't want to say it's my calling because I'm bound for better things, but this is fun. I'm having a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I always, people always hit me up all the time and say, man, what equipment do I got to get? And And I'm just like, you know what? It don't really matter what you get. Record 5 to 10 podcasts first, then come ask me
Yep.
about, because the thing you're going to need to do is work. That's what you need.
That is almost word for word what I tell people, because I got caught up in that. I mean, I was over analyzing it for about 2 weeks. I was constantly on YouTube and looking up what kind of microphone,
Right.
And it's like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Why don't I just get started?
Absolutely.
So it's almost like I just threw a dart at a dartboard to decide what microphone, what kind of a mixer, and I just jumped into it. That's what you got to do.
The hardest thing is that consistency and staying at it, man, because you can buy all the toys in the world, but if you just do that one show and then you leave it, it's nothing. Like, put in the passion, put in the work, and don't worry about the numbers, all of that. Because when I was podcasting originally, podcasting wasn't a thing. So
no,
with no numbers, and you didn't really know how it was going, but I liked it. I liked doing it. You know what I'm saying? I did it for myself.
Do you worry about how many people are listening? Do you ever think about that? Do you ever try to think, okay, what do I have to do to get more listeners? Or do you just do your thing?
Well, at this point now, I think about it in terms of how much, and this might sound bad, I don't care. I do how much more money can I get?
Yeah.
That's what, I don't need no listeners.
No.
I just need the bread.
Yeah.
So I don't trip on how many subscribers I have or how many listeners. I only look at the end of the month, how much is coming in on that Patreon account and how much is coming on that YouTube, so I can pay rent and do all these other stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I sort of frame it at this point. So I know there's things I can do that can generate more money or things I know are going to get clicks.
Yeah.
But in terms of if I have the most subscribers and all that, I used to care a lot. I used to pay for like stats and all that.
I
just look at my analytics in dollars and cents. I treat it like a job.
Yep.
And that's how I do it.
I decided before I even started, I wasn't going to get caught up in how many people are listening or watching now that I'm on a video format. I'm not going to think about that. I'm just going to do what I do to monetize it and just look at the dollars and cents that come in. That's it.
Yeah. That's and you'll figure out once you start, there's going to be something that, there's always something that click at some point or go viral and you're like, oh, okay, this is working. And that, definitely pay attention to that. But like I said, I was doing it when nobody cared. So I was like, I'm going to still do it even if they don't care. But blissfully, some people do care. So I got something to work with. But
what I found out is the episodes of mine that have gone viral is when I'm solo on the mic, no guest.
Really?
And when I'm ranting about, well, I take that back. I've had two guests, important guests that came on that really drove up the listens. But when I'm solo on the mic and I'm ranting or discussing social political issues back home in the States, those are the ones that have gone. And I acknowledge that, but I can't really act upon that knowledge because it's tiring. I don't want to get pigeonholed like that. I don't want to be the guy that's all he talks about. It's social political stuff. I mean, those things are dear to my heart, but I want to talk about them just when the spirit moves me.
Gotcha. Yeah. I hear you.
I just have to keep it real. I'm keeping it real with myself.
Yeah. It's always the salacious sort of drama filled videos. It's on YouTube that they can't perform, but then you got to ask yourself, do I want to constantly be in that,
Yeah,
that can, like you say, to wear you down.
I'll step in there when when the spirit moves me, when the inspiration, when the motivation, when the anger or emotion is there, I'll go there. But to make that my thing, can't do it.
I hear you.
Can't do it. I don't have any heart trouble at the moment, and I don't want any. So
no, you don't want that.
All right, man. Listen, it's getting late over here in Norway. It's like middle of the day up there, but over here it's about 9:30 at night. I gotta.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I gotta get my beauty sleep. Got to do that.
Well, listen, man, this was great.
This
is so honored to be on here.
Oh, I'm honored that you came. Like I said, you inspired me.
Wow.
My buddy Aaron Turner, shout out to him again, told me about you. I checked you out and got inspired immediately. So awesome. The honor is mine, brother. I like what you're doing.
Keep pushing each other.
Yeah, let's just keep doing it. I like what you're doing. I want you to know you always have a place here. Anytime you have anything going on, I want to have you back on. Whenever you feel like coming back on, you've got a place here. All
right. Maybe we could do one where we really go. We'll geek out on some Star Wars and different stuff like that.
Oh man, I know those movies by heart, so I'm ready. Okay. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Should've told me that.
Oh man, I'm ready. Okay.
Awesome.
Michael Dean, everybody. Check out his podcast. Check him out on YouTube. How do they find you? What's the easiest way to find you?
Yeah, just look up, if you're a Prince fan, Podcast on Prince, podcastjuice.net. You'll find us on all the popular podcasting platforms and on YouTube.
Outstanding.
Yes, sir.
Michael Dean, much love to you, brother. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Working like a job.
Bye, everybody.